In this video, we're going to be covering one of the most iconic concepts in any RTS game and for Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds clone campaigns, which is rushing. Rushing is a concept of getting military units out early to do damage, scout and wrestle map control from your opponent early in the game. You may have heard of things like 6-pool, D-rush, 2-racks in other RTS games such as StarCraft 2 or Age of Empires. In Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, our star building here for rushing is the Troop Center, and 2 of its 4 units can be built from the very start of the game in Tech Level 1, making those the units what this concept is built around. And the term we're going to focus on here is Mountie Rushing. I originally intended for all of this to just be in one video, but I have so much to say on the topic and I intend these videos to serve as a good reference tool to players of any experience level. For simplicity, I'm going to split them into 2 videos, themed around the tech levels. I will be talking about 2 specific units to utilise in conducting these rushes. First, we have the Mounted Trooper, a fairly fast cavalry sort of unit. The trooper rides on a mounted animal with a flamethrower doing fairly decent damage to buildings, mechs and heavy weapons. Because of their mobility, the Mounted Trooper is the ideal unit to use when rushing in Tech Level 1. The Trooper Recruit is the first unit in the Laser Trooper line, and though it does some basic entry-level damage, it's incredibly slow and vulnerable, and therefore not an ideal rushing tool unless there are other parameters that can cover for this weakness. In terms of mobility, compared to the Mounted Trooper, it's completely polarising. Now, with that being said, let's get into the video and kick things off with Mountie Rushing. Mountie rushes are fairly simple on paper on their implementation. Often, all we need to do is identify a decent stream of food to keep our command centre running, and a little extra to afford the mounted troopers. They cost 55 food, 20 Nova, so very similar to a worker. We start the game with 100 Nova, so can realistically afford 4 of these were we to forego basic training, or if we are playing as the Confederacy / the Geonosians. Following setting up our eco, we just need 1 troop centre and a power core. So what we will often find is that fork in the road we identified during our T1 tutorial, following setting up our carbon, instead of switching the new surplus of workers onto food, we just keep those on carbon until we can afford this infrastructure and start building Mounties alongside workers. Mounties are mobile with a large health pool and some decent armour, so they take an awful long time to be bashed down by workers, and when a certain mass are made, troopers must be built to counter them. This is a real important part of both defending and being successful with the rush. The longer it takes your opponent to wrestle you away from their base, or the more Mounties you gather up to terrorise them, the more ahead you can get yourself into often a situation where you could outright win the game or tech ahead of them for an advantage. Mounties are all about forcing mistakes from your opponent. The more carbon your opponent has to invest into their own economy to get to T2, the more successful you will find Mounties. Why is this? Because a harassment is often knocking workers off of carbon, delaying their tech time and ability to punish you. Meaning they are not getting the carbon they need to get the farms that they need to get the food to tech up. The real stop to a Mountie rush is your opponent being tech level 2 and having trooper upgrades, because this now opens you up to being counterattacked. Troopers have access to additional range in T2, meaning it's difficult to defend with just recruits yourself. When you're playing the game in this manner and forcing most of your workers onto carbon early, you're setting yourself up into a food hole where you shouldn't really have a big surplus of food until you've invested further into it. That's why it's paramount you do well with your Mountie rush. It can be mechanically demanding when you need to start pulling workers off carbon following the troop centre and power core, getting farms, or reassigning workers onto different pieces of accessible food. You're going to be spending 105 food per production rotation, so it's up to you through good micro and smart trading with your Mounties to slow your opponent down, stall their tech time, their military infrastructure, their trooper count, or even their workers' resource uptime, through having to run away back to the command centre or standing and fighting your Mounties. But when done right, you will pull ahead and leave yourself with an interesting, almost 3-way fork in the road here about how to handle the game. I would describe this as A. Teching up and rushing with troopers, B. Going tech level 3, or C. Even more Mounties and staying tech level 1 with additional troop centres, building up a large amount to kill the power core or economic buildings such as the animal nurseries so you can steal the nerfs. Each of these options are going to be fairly circumstantial and based on your own experience and what you can identify as happening through your own rush. How many troopers does your opponent have? How many troop centres? Are they tech level 2? Are they holding it with ease? You need to be making an informed decision regarding this, calculating whether they can be killed now or it's better to collect little leads and keep them turtled up so you can get ahead at home in tech or with unit count. But more often than not, until your opponent has 2 troop centres, T2 and a decent core of units, you should be able to maintain map control and through it feel safe at home to play the game on your own terms while you catch up in food and tech. When you're approaching this fork in the road, it's often best to keep your Mounties alive as long as possible, even if you don't plan on making any more or upgrading them. Just the threat of them alone helps you scout and keep your opponent locked in their base. Within team games, we can even send them off to the player's pocket teammate if they've been handling it well, further slowing them down, which is important to stop that player influencing affairs. This is particularly important as because in a team game the window to do damage is often smaller due to the teching pockets. You further slowing yourself down by staying in T1 longer, you're potentially exacerbating your vulnerability to the pocket. So slowing them down may in some cases be essential to counterweight that aspect. You may even, if you have a lot of Mounties to commit to this task, force those pocket players to invest in turrets they absolutely would not build. And because those turrets cost a lot of ore, if you're working with your own pocket and they have air, you'll have a much easier time of dealing damage to those players, sometimes even outright killing them due to having less accessibility to an anti-air turret. Or you may find you're able to kill off the player's power core, delaying their ability to push out strike mechs or fighters quickly, helping both you, yourself, and your pocket. We can see that Mounties offer a very flexible array of strategic decision making, purely because of their combat strength, accessibility, and their mobility. Mounties are difficult to deal with, particularly for a lower level player who hasn't got the muscle memory to properly nail their own tech level 1 economy. Being attacked so early and knocked off bits of your economy can force some horrible mistakes, so the next section I'm going to focus on defending Mountie rushes in different scenarios. Defending. Scouting and identifying the rushes happening is paramount to being correctly prepared. You can be looking for the building placement of the troop centre, though sometimes players may decide to Mountie a little bit later, or hold the troop centre until they can afford the power core alongside it. It would be fastest to place it down and queue the Mountie unpowered while waiting for the Nova, so best to look for it. You can also scout the player's worker distribution, compare it to your own. If all their workers are basically on carbon, where you have that amount on food, that's a red flag that they're up to something. Though they could be fishing, you should be asking yourself what they are doing and searching with your scout for a quick answer, so you can adjust accordingly. Under-preparing for things in JBG is one of the most common mistakes players are punished for, and this is no different when it comes to Mounties. When you're being mounted on the wing, you need to be letting your teammates know so that they can prepare accordingly by walling up their power cores. Walling up the power core is one of the best things you can do to limit the Mountie damage. It's giving you one less thing to worry about. Leaving it unwalled can really test your own mechanics and invite situations where you can get picked apart and misplay not pulling workers to repair in time. If you're looking for the counterattack, it can be hard to justify moving out while it remains unwalled and your opponent still has Mounties. The kind of panic response you need when Mounties show up and surprise you varies based on how early into the game it is. If you're being mounted by another player when they intend to keep making Mounties past the 2 or so one might make while teching up to tech level 2, you're going to need trooper recruits. If it's a little bit later than that and you're T3ing in the pocket or close to teching up, you might be able to get away with just building one turret to discourage the Mounties lingering in your carbon line. GBG is not super balanced with regards to defending mounted troopers either. One important aspect to consider here is repairing. Some of the civs in the game have non-biological workers. Now, they can't be healed by a medic like the bio boys can, but they can repair each other and at a fairly rapid speed. So if you're being mounted and playing a mechanical worker civ, you can simply melee a Mountie with one worker and repair it with the other, keeping it from chasing down your workers and killing them while you desperately build up the actual counter you're working toward. Now, with all that said and done, I'm going to show some footage of myself Mountie rushing in a multiplayer game, and we'll talk through some of the concepts being displayed there. This will showcase a lot of the aspects we've talked about. So in this clip, I will be rushing Brat here with Mounties. And what we'll see is that there's a few nerfs, some decent hunt, but I don't think there's really enough to just get you all the way up to T2 too quickly. So you do need like a few farms, I think. So because it's a much slower paced game and you might need a bit of carbon invested, it's a bit easier to get damage done with the rush. You can see there's only a couple of nerfs there. But because we found our lure early, we're sort of inclined to try and put them in a nursery there, which being the prerequisite to build the Mounties we're going to need. So we've maybe not really decided that we want to Mountie just yet. It's not really something that I ever think about right at the start of the game. Unless it's maybe a team game or something. I feel I need to do a ton of damage. But we've got all those lured Rontos early, so we've got plenty of food. And we can get all those workers onto carbon. You can see I'm getting the animal nursery now. So I'll maybe think about doing it now, knowing that I've already got the nursery. And it's not always a guarantee that my opponent's done the same thing. Being a low nerf map, they might be eating the nerfs at the start. And once you've eaten one or two of them, you kind of want to eat them all, really. You don't really want to house a small amount. So find our fourth nerf there. Just avoid getting housed for too long there. And we're probably going to be looking to scout our opponent now. Luring another animal, just keeping the food income going. We're always going to have a little bit of a surplus here with the hunt because it's so efficient. And I'm going to drop the troop centre. So I just try to find him here. We know he's going to be about where we just clicked our mouse now. He's probably told us that he's got shafted on his Ronto there that spawned all the way behind the carbon, which really sucks. It's got enough for a power core as well, so we want to be dropping that. And then immediately just building a Mountie since the troop centre just finished. Even when it's unpowered, it'll build a little bit, just really slow, but we can get some of that percentage done before the power core is done. I just need to stay on top of our houses as well because we're going to be making like an extra unit. And we're rallying that Mountie off to his carbon as soon as possible. You can see we're putting some workers onto Nova now as well so that we can get some extra Nova because we do have basic training. We've not really cut that corner in this instance. So we're going to need a bit extra Nova to get a third and a fourth Mountie here. It might be a little bit late on that. Ideally you probably want to cut like basic training, but we were doing so much luring and there's probably a little bit of a gap in the command center or something like that and we got it then. Or we got it before we decided we were going to Mountie. So the Mounties arrive here. You can see he's had to drop a food processor, so the intention is there that you're going to need farms to get up to T2. You can see we're just rallying them here. You've got to use the scout with it as well, and we've got to try and build farms while we're doing this, so it can be quite tricky mechanically. But I mean, what you have to do at home in terms of your food, it really just depends on the map spawn and what's available to you. We're just to try to be super optimal here. I see we're trying to keep him off the carbon, but we're placing our farms as well, because as we talked about, we need to keep him distracted while we catch up on food and tech, or even get ahead. Because we're going to have a lot more farms than he does right now, because he's not mining any carbon. So we're going for the power core here. Be very lucky to get it. So he's desperately trying to power it or repair it there. He's got the command center firing at the Mounties. We're trying to pull them back, get the low ones to drop the aggro, and we managed to get the power core just before he throws out his trooper recruits there. I think he just had a little bit of a misclick on the repair button. So that's like a huge advantage for us, because we now know he's just got 3 trooper recruits. It's going to take ages for him to build a 4th one. There's not really any danger of these like counter-attacking us. He's trying to, but we're going to ambush them in the middle of the map. The Mounties do not too bad against trooper recruits in low numbers. And as you can see, we're getting all these farms at home. We're just trying to keep the trooper count low and just basically make it that it's a reality where he just has to stay in his own base so that we can do what we need to do back at home and not worry about being counter-attacked. Because our units are not going to be very good if they are engaged in some sort of like counter-attack skirmish where there's a lot of troopers. So we're just killing the scout that was in our base there. I think he was luring my Mounties out of the middle of the map or something with the scout. See, we're just keeping Mountie production here out of troop centres, getting bloomin' housed, because catches you off guard how many things you're making at a time. constantly attacking, and he's only got the one troop centre because he's going to need all those farms to get it to attack up. He has hit T2 now and he has got trooper. He's going to need 2 troop centres with the amount of Mounties that we're just going to keep making. We're going for the power core again. It'll be forcing some repair, costing carbon. I'm just being annoying and making sure that all the troopers that he builds out of that one troop centre stay at home. Because we've not even clicked the button for T2 yet. And in these low numbers, just going to try and trade them, bring them all down to like half health and stuff, put the pressure on. And that's us hitting T2 now. So we're going to feel a little bit safer now, since we know T2's on the way, and we could switch to troopers if need be. We're just building houses around the base, forming little walls and stuff, giving us vision. Because he has to get a second troop centre now. Now that he's probably sorted out his economy and got enough troops, but we're going to go straight back onto the power core. So we've just been bullying the troops, bringing them to half health. A bit of a misclick there again. Loses the power core a second time, super tilting. And then we're going straight for the troopers. We don't want them counter-attacking. We could probably just go straight T3 here in this moment, but it's kind of up to you what you want to do. We've opted to build some troopers and just sort of play it safe. And we honestly maybe think that we could just outright kill him with the troopers as well, given the state of things with his power cores. So I just send them up there for a bit more damage, because with the troopers and the Mounties together we could maybe just kill all of his troopers. You can see we're not losing them all, we're just keeping them around the base. Just so the threat's there, that if he tries to move out we could run in and go for his power core again. So he doesn't move out for a counter attack there. So we're going to have to think about that at home, but we're going to go straight for the power core. A couple of troopers there, going to try and kill them. Move our troopers in and do some damage. Just being super annoying. Just having to make 2 turrets. We've made 2 turrets at home as well. But we're going to struggle to protect our Nova and the sort of northern region of our farms there, because we don't have enough units at home. And it doesn't look like we're trying to sort of go T3 now, since we've got so much Nova and food. So we made some troopers, we're making a temple, because we've got so much Nova. About the only time that you can maybe get Jedi into tech level 2 gameplay is when you've built up all that surplus Nova from having the workers mining it to fund the Mountie Rush. So we're going to get a second tech building. And we're just going to use the Padawan and the troopers just to defend ourselves there. I mean, at this point we're still, I think, very much ahead, particularly in food and tech, just with the way that the game's sort of gone there. And you can use the spaceport just to buy a bit of extra food and go up to T3. We've definitely still got sort of map control and everything. As he, after throwing those troopers away, will be just sort of turtling up and try to get more farms down, get the food income going and get to T3 himself. There's a few extra troopers, they're probably the ones he's made to defend the Mounties, he sent them out as well. You can see the tech buildings have been made, so he knows what's coming there. And that's really about all you need to do with it.
It's just about getting that initial damage done, using the control of the Mounties to make sure that you can get sort of up to an even tech level, but hopefully with a bit of an advantage in hand. That's the whole idea about it. So, I hope that this video has made clear what a Mountie Rush is and about, and I hope it proves useful for you regardless of your own skill level within your own GBG games. As always, if you've enjoyed the video and want to help us grow the online GBG community, please leave a like and a comment on the video, subscribe to the channel for future Star Wars Galactic Battleground content. You can join in with our GBG community link down below in the description, and if you want to support in a different way, you can find a PayPal link down below where you can thank me by buying me a coffee. Thanks and goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video.